What is up, everyone? Welcome to another Thursday, and thanks for joining me for my weekly office hours. My name is JDM, aka Josh David Miller, and I'm here every Thursday to talk about startups, product market fit, ideas, everything in between. It's a lot of fun. For those of you who are new here, you can always submit a question in advance by smacking this link down here. It should be in the description as well. And you can do a written question, an audio question, even a video question, which I will play here. We got some good ones this week. So we're going to talk about user onboarding. We're going to talk about traction. We're going to talk about marketing and customer development, and a little bit more, plus whatever you guys want to talk about here. So super excited to re-engage with you guys. I took some time off last week, so I wasn't here for that. Okay, before we dive in too much, I'm going to revisit this a little later. Here's my question of the day for you guys. So you ask me questions. I'm going to ask you guys one. So describe your startup in 5 words. I did this on Twitter yesterday. It was kind of fun. So I'm doing it here. So throw that down into the comments. Whatever you're working on, your startup, your company, your organization, whatever it is, or even yourself, if you don't have your own startup company yet, describe it in 5 words. Drop it down to the comments. Super curious what you guys got. So with that, let's go ahead and move on. So the first question is from Kyle is what's the best way to onboard new users? And so this is referring to SaaS specifically, so software. But I think the principles will probably apply to other things, but you have to abstract a little bit. So we're going to just zero in on SaaS a little bit. And so there's a few things. So across 100 plus startup companies that I've worked with in some capacity, this is what I've seen work, right? And it's basically four things, maybe 5 things. 5 things. We'll do 5 things. So the first one is that you have to connect your call to action that you make during sign up to the action that they're doing. So oftentimes, you'll have a kind of a dumb call to action like sign up or something like that, which maybe is then fine, but those aren't super strong. So as you try to increase your conversion rates to get greater acquisition or activation, you're going to end up doing something more specific. So if you're using a product that's a to-do list or whatever, it'll say something like start managing your to-do list, right? Or I'm on StreamYard right now, doing this live stream here. And so I don't remember what they're called actually, because I've had an account for a while, but it could be something like, start your broadcast or something like that. There's a call to action that gets people to sign up, that converts them really, really well. And so if you have a call to action like that, when you start doing your onboarding, then you have to have that in mind. That is the expectation. You set the expectation they're going to do this thing or that they're going to get this value. And now you have to give them the payoff for that. So keep that in mind. So the best way to onboard new users, number one is to make sure you connect whatever your call to action was as part of sign up to what you're doing. Good morning, Mike. Hello. Drop in, what you're working on in 5 words. Super curious. Let me know. Okay, so that's kind of one. There's 4 more. So the second one I think is, and this is a common mistake. It's that you usually are doing onboarding because you need information. Maybe during the official sign up, you ask for email address and password or something like that. But now you need to know more in order for them to get value out of the tool. And so you start asking them follow-up questions. And that's fine. Like you have to do that in order to get value, right? And there's lots of tips and tricks you can use as far as the user experience goes. But the golden rule is to ask for the information that you need during sign up, but not any more. So 2 problems, there's 2 limits to that, right? If you don't ask for enough information when you're doing onboarding, what happens is that when they go to do this action that you promised them, it's going to have to ask them for more information. And it's like, oh, right, you're making me do this extra stuff. And nobody likes that. So you want to make sure you collect the information that you need during sign up. But that has to be balanced against collecting too much information. Because if you collect too much information, then it's like, oh, why are you asking me this? And oh, I'm tired of answering questions. And you're going to get a bounce rate. That's probably not too cool. So you want to ask for the information that you need during sign up, but you don't want to ask for any more information than you really need there. So as far as the first one, use a CTA that matches their expectation. Yes, exactly. Definitely want to do that. And okay, so then the next in the chain here. So connect the CTA to what you're actually delivering on there. Collect only the info you need, but do collect the info you need. And then third is to put them in a place right away where they can activate. And so I'll talk about pirate messaging in a second with another question. But the basic premise here is that when they get into your system, finally, they need to get value right away. Like that's the whole point. If they don't get value right away, they're done, right? They're bouncing and they're not that invested yet. So you have to get them into a point where they can deliver that value, which means that you want to put them into the place where they're going to get that. And so that, depending on your software, that's going to be a different thing, but it's probably not the home screen. It's probably not the dashboard. Like maybe if you're doing an analytics tool and it goes and scrapes your Twitter or something and like brings in data, then the dashboard might be cool because you're pre-populated with a bunch of data. But if you're going into a to-do app or something dumb like that, and you just drop them into an empty list, that's just not interesting. So you want to put them into the place where they can actually get value right away and create that value. So that's the third one. Fourth one is that oftentimes when you're in those places, there's nothing there yet. And so you have to, have an empty list or an empty state is what we call it. And so you can make really good use of those. There's a website, I'll try to add it to the description. It's called Empty States. And I think it's just empty state. And then the ES is the TLD. So like empty stat.es, but I'll put the link in the description. But anyway, and they have a bunch of examples of empty states that you can look at. But this is where instead of just showing an empty list that says, in tiny font right beneath the header, like you don't have any to-dos, it puts you like a big thing right in the middle that has like a fun illustration. It kind of draws our attention that says, that tells you the value that you're going to get by taking the action of creating a to-do. And then it gives you a button, a big call to action in the middle of the screen to actually go and do that so that you don't have to like find the button and you're just kind of in this empty thing. So you're going to get much better and smoother onboarding if you actually focus in on getting like really solid empty states on there. So the 4 things so far. Connect the CTA to whatever the onboarding process is, collect all the information you need, but no more. Drop it in a place where they can activate, make use of empty states when you have to there, so everything just makes sense. And then the last thing, which is the one that's not like the others, is really early on, particularly, you want to leverage probably in-app messaging, like an intercom type thing, because you're not going to really know what they're going to do yet. And so a lot of people have this temptation to put in those little tours, where it's a tooltip here and a tooltip there, and you go next. Those don't work. The data that I've seen they don't work that well. And usually it's like it's the old joke that user interfaces are like jokes. If you have to explain them, they're not very good. Right. And so if you have to like do this tooltip tour of your whole interface, it probably means your interface is overly complicated. And instead, you should be guiding the user to getting value, not in telling them how they can go hunt down value of their own through these 15 tooltips that you're going to show them along the way. So instead of doing that, actually follow the first 4 tips. But then since you don't know where the confusion is going to be yet because you're early stage, give them the ability to ask a question and get an answer from you, from the founder or from whoever's head of product on your team, whatever that looks like, to get those real answers in relative real time. So that's the last thing that I would do for that. So that's question number 1. Then we have let's see. Okay, so Mike answered the question. So and your startup in 5 words: magic focused massive online game. Actually, I follow that. My initial reaction is, aren't all of these online games, but the massive online games, magic focused? I don't know. I'm not a gamer. I haven't played since Super Mario Brothers. But that's a thing there too. And then you got a second one here. So online multiplayer development framework. Okay, I get what that is. But yes, like to your point, like there's a value prop statement like somewhere missing in there, which is really cool. So that's great. So let's move on to the next question, which is how do I find traction? And so this is actually it was a slightly different question. I reworded it a few ways to kind of take it the direction that I wanted to go, so I wouldn't have to do the preamble here. That's why it's a little generic. But the idea here is that there's a way that you should be thinking about the process of finding traction. Because if we just said how do you find traction, you might say, well, you sell customers. But then it's like, okay, well, how do you sell customers? And then becomes this whole chain. And I also think that thinking about traction as only what makes sales is also just not helpful. So like, yes, the ultimate traction is in getting these sales, right, in a repeatable, scalable way, but like that's usually really far off when you're starting out. And so to say that there's no traction between now and then, it's just the wrong measure. And so we need to chain together a bunch of leading indicators that like, this is a signal that if it's right, then we'll get that one, and if that's right, that's a signal that we'll get the next one, and signal that if all of those line up, then we have this money traction, that's coming in. And so the best way to think about that, I think, are pirate metrics. And so it's 6 things, AAARRR, awareness, acquisition, activation, revenue, retention, referral, AAARRR, the pirate metrics, R, right? Okay. So the basic idea is that it forms a system. You can call it a funnel, you can call it a factory. There's lots of different ways to think about it. But the basic idea is that people have to know about your business, therefore become aware of it. They have to encounter you and your product in some way. That's acquisition. They have to get value out of it, like we were talking about before. That's activation. Of course, we want them to pay for it. That's revenue. And then we want them to stay with us for a while. That's retention. And then we want those people who are in our ecosystem to help us get more people, acquire more users, which is referral. So that like we have those metrics, right? If you want a deep dive into those metrics, that is the subject of my newsletter this week, which is a tip or trick every week to help you go to market and find traction faster. If you go here, the link is in the description, the email address right at the top, put it in and it'll come out tomorrow morning. So if you want a deep dive into pirate metrics, there's that. But back to traction. So the reason I bring up this system of metrics is that actually tells you where you are in that process is where you find traction. So if you're at this, like the revenue part of this, right, then your correct traction metric is going to have something to do with the amount of users who are paying, right? But as you get further in the process, it might be how long are they staying? So you get users in and they pay, but do they stay, right? And you get them in and do they pay, do they stay? And then after that, are they helping us get further customers, right? Do we have some virality to it or some co-creation that's involved there? But so it goes even further than this dumbed down version of like traction equals sales. But before that, we still have a few stages. And so we can look at acquisition or we can look at activation rates. And those are where we want to focus our time before we get to the revenue side. So before they pay, they have to get value. Before they get value, we have to acquire them. Right. So if you think about that as a funnel or a chain or a factory or whatever it is that you want to call it, then that tells you like how you zero in to find to find traction. And so if you're really early on, then it's like, are there customers? Where are they? Do they have this problem? Okay, they have this problem. Do they want this solution for it? Okay, the way that we know if they want this solution for them is we put some type of offer in front of them, some value prop in front of them, and then they react. They click the link, they put in their email address, they do whatever, right? That is testing the acquisition part of it. And then once you get that, you start testing those further things along the way. And traction is just a measure of how many of those users along the way are giving you affirmative responses, meaning how many of them are giving you confirmatory data that you're on the right track. In other words, it's a signal that the user will eventually pay if they respond affirmatively to your value proposition. It doesn't mean they will, right? But if they don't respond to your value proposition, they will never pay for it, right? So it's a signal that we're on the right track. And so you're just looking at those chains of signals. So think about traction as the whole journey, break it down to where are you right now, and then put in only as much effort as you have confidence in order to get data back. And then as you get more data, that should increase your confidence. And as your confidence increases, then so does the size of your bet until eventually you build a product and get users and they pay and yay. Right. So think about traction that way. Break it down, make a small bet as early on in that chain as you are, starting with customer, problem, solution, right? And then moving on into revenue. So that's that. So related to that is this, I have two related questions that I want to talk about today. And so one is, I launched to crickets, and can you recommend a good marketer? And this is a question I actually just throw into my office hours every couple of months because it literally comes up every single week. And so eventually I just go, let's do a helpful reminder of what this means. So the behind the question here, this is an anonymous question. I chose to keep this one anonymous, but the basic idea here is that you have a startup, they go, oh, this is cool. There's a problem I think is real, and they create this product and they launch the product and customers aren't buying. And so like, okay, we're not getting our message across. It's like people aren't getting it. They're not getting the value. So I want to hire a marketer to help them get the value. The problem is that they actually skipped a step. and they don't know it. They don't realize that they skipped the most important step probably of the process. And that is that when you're in a startup, like we define the journey as, find customers, solve their problem, charge money for it, right? And the very first step is find customers. So if you've built and launched a solution without actually finding the customers, you skip the very first step. And so your confidence in how and on whether or not there are even customers out there, whether or not they have the problem, whether or not you have the right solution is actually really low. It did not warrant building the product. You should not have built it. If you launch and don't have customers, it meant that you skipped a step and you made a mistake. And this is really costly and it's really hard because what happens now is that we're super invested. We put so much time, months probably, right? Potentially even years sometimes into getting this thing live and getting it to market. And now we have this this impossible choice of, do we abandon it? How much do we abandon it? Like it's a sunk cost, but like I don't want it to be a sunk cost. And so you end up in this big trap, right? So that's it's a really, really big problem. It's because you skipped a step. So I really want to call that out. The problem is that you don't need a marketer. Do not hire a marketer. Do not pay for a marketer. You want to go back, and even though you still have the product, you want to go back and do Startup 101 and get in front of really early stage customers and listen to their problems, understand their problems. It could be as simple as you tweaking your language, right? Now, a marketer can't tell you the language. I know that we think that that's what marketers do, but it's not, right? Marketers can help you with the language once you know who the customer is, exactly what the problem is and how you need to solve it. But the problem is you don't know that. And so if you don't know that, you can't tell the marketer can't help you. What you have to do is, as a founder, understand their problems, and they're going to tell you, customers are going to tell you exactly what their issue is. They're going to tell you exactly what language is going to work to get your early adopters, because it's going to be the language that they use in conversation with you. And then you can use that language to start saying, okay, well, now we can put the problem in front of people. Is the problem resonating? And then you get back eventually to this thing that you built. And now you can say, okay, is it the right thing? Does it need minor tweaks? Does it need major tweaks? Is it the right customers? Is it the right audience? Is it the right price point? Is it the right pricing model? Like, am I charging money the right way? Like, there's so many things that were just assumed in the thing that you built that you now need to validate kind of one by one. So you still have to go back to the beginning, validate customer, validate problem, and then validate solution, and then go through that mechanism. You skip a step, but you still have to go back and do it. And you just have to cross your fingers and really, really hope that you didn't waste all of that effort and time and energy building something that wasn't, where there was no there. So again, every couple of months, I'll probably come back to this and just talk about it a little bit differently each time, because literally every single week, a startup talks about this to me. So the answer is yes, I can recommend a good marketer, but if you're further along, if you already have some traction and it's really about like finding some marketing to help with that, yeah, I know some people. But if you're really early on and you don't have customers yet and you haven't figured out that puzzle, marketing's not for you. So this is a related question, but it's a bit different. And so this isn't necessarily involving as big a mistake, right? So the idea here is that somebody says like, okay, I customers, they have this problem. They tell me that they have this problem, but they're not buying the solution. And when I tell them about the solution, they go, yeah, that's interesting. Like that would solve the problem. So it sounds like they have the problem and they would want the solution, but they don't buy. And like, why is that? Like, blah, right? What's happening here is actually something that's really interesting. And that is that when we're designing value propositions to customers, when we say, okay, you have this problem and we have this solution or whatever, that there's a step that gets missed. And the step that gets missed is that not all problems are equally problematic. Right? We think that, oh, they have the problem, we have a solution, therefore they'll buy it. Well, no, because if this is the 10th most important problem in their life right now, it's not very compelling. Like it's literally not at the top of their list. It's number 10 on their list. They're not going to buy a solution to it right now, right? Or probably aren't going to buy a solution to it right now. It's just not important enough yet. So you need to be solving a problem that is high on their list, right? The flip side of that is that if you are solving a problem that's really high on their list, but in terms of the, feature set of your product, it's kind of low on your list. So it's like not the banner feature. It's kind of like, you go in there and it's buried 3 levels deep in the menu and you can find it there, right? So like, yeah, technically it solves their need, right? But it's obviously not very important to you. It's not very prominent. Therefore, that's also not very compelling to the customer. So when you're designing a value proposition, what you need to do is actually look at the lists of your customers' wants, needs, and fears, and rank them. Like what's at the top of their list. They need to tell you these are my wants, needs, and fears, and here's where they rank. And then when you're designing your value prop, you look at the features, benefits, and experience that you are providing to cover those needs, wants, and fears, right? And then you have a relative rank on there as well. And you want to make sure that what's at the top of your list and the top of their list is there, because that means that you're solving a compelling problem in a compelling way. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to solve the items at the top of the list, right? That's because people pay for solutions to more than one thing, but you need to be somewhere, in the top range. You can't be number 10, and you don't need to solve all the problems at the top of their list, right? Solving one problem is enough. If you're solving a couple, that's kind of cool too. So make sure you actually rank priorities when it comes to that. And if you do want to know more about that, that was the value proposition design was the subject of my podcast last week. It's called Inside the Box with JDM. And if you hit this link here, I'll put a link in the show notes, but if you or in the description, but if you click this link right in the menu, there's a link to the podcast. It's insidethebox.show, and it's the most recent episode. So you can check that out. Deep dive into value prompts. Okay, and with that, that's kind of all I have here for office hours this week. Thank you so much for joining here. I'll be back next Thursday, August 4th, 10 a.m. Pacific, right here. Same link, same everything. So just hop on and join. If you want to ask a question in advance, again, the link is in the description, but you can hit this link up, send in your question. I'll address it here. If you submit a video, I'll play it on the air. With that, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you guys soon. Peace out. See y'all.